Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Democrats emboldened. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the daycare debacle. And what's the legislature's position on ethics reform?
What's it gonna resist temptation? There'll always be more.
Oh, I see. Their position is the same as the Bangkok brothel owners. Oh well, those ethics laws, what were we thinking? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, back.
I'm back. Beth is back.
Yeah, well, this is Happy Baby Month.
This is Happy Baby Month.
Our Chandler Hine is just a few short 20-some-odd days away from delivery.
Yes, and Steph is a week and a half behind her.
Right. Yep.
Well, Jack.
And I'm March 3rd.
I have no idea what that means. You know, one thing we have just seen so much this year, the leadership, the Republican Party leadership, Beth said that this would be a quiet session, no controversy, and yet they have come out with at least 2 bills to undermine the state ethics laws that they championed just 7 short years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we all know these ethics laws need clarification. Like, there are some things we need to do with it. But the way that they're coming at this is basically saying, okay, well, let's let some of these people do things that were otherwise unethical, and let's let some of these people do things. And, you know, I think there's a bill up to take teachers out from under the ethics laws, and I think that's fine. But some of this economic development stuff that's going on, it screams Mike Hubbard type shenanigans.
Susan, Greg Canfield, Secretary of Commerce, is pushing a bill that would do just that, allow lawmakers, public officials to lobby as long as it's under economic
And to take money for doing so. Remember, Mike Hubbard was convicted of two of those convictions were over this same deal, where he was taking money from, let's say, Capital Cups for the SO2 thing to present it in front of the governor and in front of Secretary Canfield, and that's lobbying. And this is basically making that very same thing legal again.
Jack, should we just give up?
Well, almost. I mean, this is so brazen, and it's the ultimate fox guarding the hen house deal. Mm-hmm. To let these very people who are under the ethics laws to go back and change them to make it where they can be hired by a company for economic development, when all it is lobbying. Mm-hmm. It's exactly what it is. They have redefined what lobbying is.
And bring it under the roof.
Y'all get on me about fussing about Mac McCutcheon and Dell. This bill shouldn't even have a hearing, but I'll guarantee it's on the fast track.
Well, it looks like it may be getting buried because they do not like being embarrassed. Mm-hmm. There's another bill sponsored by Senator Tripp Pittman, and I think he's now seen the light on that, hopefully, where, Susan, they can go to the Ethics Commission and get private, secret opinions, and then they have the weight of immunity in a court of law.
Right. As it stands right now, anything that has any opinion that has weight in a court of law has to be a public opinion. But what they want to do is get secret opinions where, and they're saying it so that it doesn't interfere with their companies. It might, you know, cause some problems with negotiations if they knew that they had to get an ethics opinion. But then there's no way to figure out what these guys are doing until, let's say, you end up with a grand jury and they go, oh, I've got to get out of jail free card.
Right. Wait, because, hold on, remind me again, the Ethics Commission is appointed by the governor and the speaker, right?
And the lieutenant governor.
Lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
So
And the president pro tem.
President pro tem. So all these people, they get to appoint this little committee of I'm sure, unbiased arbiters of justice, right?
Well, of course they are.
And then they get to issue an opinion. So what about, like, what happened to juries and what happened to the criminal justice system here? I mean, this is just, it's a blatant attempt to circumvent the entire Attorney General's office and everything.
Well, Jack, you brought it up last week. I mean, this group of people that sit on the Ethics Commission right now some of them have the moral values of a Bangkok brothel owner, and they'll bend the rule. I don't even know why we need the ethics laws interpreted.
Well, what's supposed to happen is that I'm a lawmaker and I want to enter into an activity of something. I write a letter to the Ethics Commission, which is public record. They review it and say, they write you a letter back saying, not a good idea, or yeah, we give you the green light. Now they're trying to do it behind closed doors,
right.
where it'll never see the light of day. God only knows what will happen to us then.
Well, and then what they'll do is they'll cheat. They'll write it, and then they'll pass something for their buddies. And look, we saw this before. Patricia Todd, bless her heart, I love her to pieces. She got an ethics opinion that said she could go to work for a company and lobby the state, lobby the legislature.
It wasn't a company, was it?
Wasn't it a nonprofit?
Human rights
special
campaign.
interest group, basically.
But it said in her job description she'd be writing bills or introducing bills, she'd be lobbying, blah, blah, blah. And they gave her an opinion that said, well, maybe in this case it's okay. Well, the next week it showed up in Hubbard's briefs for reasons this court case should be dismissed. And yet she came out and said, well, I quit because of these ethics laws and because I got a subpoena.
But, well, and the Ethics Commission did come back and say no after we berated them about it and say, no, maybe that was a bad idea. But remember also Southeastern Gas District with Mike Hubbard, they gave a favorable opinion on that one, even though they shouldn't have.
It was
shady. But that gave enough doubt in the jury to call reasonable doubt on that, and he wasn't convicted, even though it was the same type of
they
transaction.
had to go back and rewrite the opinion for Patricia Todd because these high-end lawyers went in there and lobbied him to make an exception, Beth.
Right.
We don't need exceptions. We need a rule.
Right. Well, and remember, one of the beauties of our system of law in this country is that once a court rules on something, you've got what's called precedent. And so then somebody else can come back and say, well, the court already held this way once before, they should hold this way again. Right. But when you have secret opinions behind closed doors on a council, if Susan and I both go to this same committee with the same issue, and Susan's a Republican and I'm a Democrat, there's no way to guarantee we're getting fair treatment by that committee. It's Claire's not here, but I'll say it is egregious. You cannot do it.
It is. I mean, and we only got about a minute and a half left. And Jack, I want to get to this. Their idea of fixing this is to have all these special interest groups, like associations and this one and that one, come in and form a commission, and they'll rewrite the ethics law.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean by fox guard the hen house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the idea for the fix.
And Bill Marsh made some ludicrous comment that, well, we have to fix these ethics laws because it's discouraging qualified candidates from running for office, and that's malarkey.
No, it's discouraging crooks from running for office, and that's what we need to do.
Exactly.
Most people don't think about the ethics laws when they run for office. They want to get in office, and those people that are leaving the legislature because these tough or unclear ethics laws, no, they're leaving because they want to be able to make money off their office, and they can't do it. Or get drinks and all the perks.
I have a commission for them. Let's just go ahead and appoint 25 working families from Alabama to be our ethics commission, and let's let the people of this state decide what's ethical, not the lawmakers.
Well, but one thing we do know from the ethics commission that lobbyists can buy sex for legislators because it is not a thing of value.
But not food. Food
But
is
not
definitely
food.
a thing.
All right.
I think it depends on who you ask.
Well, the ethics commission doesn't think it's a thing of value. We'll leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Before we move off the ethics issue, Susan, there is a fix. I mean, right before Luther Strange accepted the ill-fated appointment as U.S. Senator, his office produced an ethics bill that would strengthen and clarify, and he spoke with all the players and they approved.
Yeah, he got together with the legislature, he got together with the lobbyists, he got together with people like Ted Hosp, and created this bill. But as soon as Luther Strange took the office, it stopped dead. When Steve Marshall came in, he said, well, it needs to be my bill if I'm going to do this. Now, the bill's still sitting there, but it's just not moving. However, my understanding is there are lawmakers that have a copy of this bill. They could move with this bill, but they're choosing not to.
I mean,
apparently.
Jack, you know, we're courting all this controversy with the daycares, with these passing sneaky bills, but they don't want to look at this piece of legislation that was agreed upon by the Republican
by a lot of the
leadership.
parties.
Yeah.
A lot of people came to the table. Yeah, I agree. And you know what? They better be careful, because there's one thing looming in June, and that's the primary elections. And if I'm running a campaign against any of these sitting people that vote for this crap, believe me, it's going to be an issue in the campaign. You're going to see it in radio ad, hear it in radio ads, see it on TV and in direct mail.
Well, and I can see Alice Martin or Troy King coming out, or even Chris Christie coming out and saying, there was an ethics bill to strengthen and clarify, Beth, and Steve Marshall hid it when he came in.
You know, look at Steve Marshall's finance report, so we might have an idea why. I mean, if it doesn't make sense, follow the money.
That's a very good point.
Well, it is, because this looks like a list of unindicted co-conspirators.
Oh, there's all the stars on there, absolutely.
The greatest
and some of them
hits
think
the
they're
Hubbard years.
hiding, but I can see you.
Yeah, you know, they don't pull the wool over your eyes very easily, do they?
No, they don't.
I do want to move on here. You know, that this goes back again to the Attorney General's office. GASP, which is a environmental group that is hoping to protect our state from polluters, they filed a Freedom of Information request or open records request with the Attorney General's office, Beth, looking for records of communication between Luther Strange and Drummond Cole right before this big blow up.
Right. Because remember what happened was Luther Strange supposedly, you know, unprovoked by anybody, sent a letter trying to dissuade this 35th Avenue Superfund site. And then as soon as he sent the first letter, he gets, what, a $25,000 contribution, and then from Boston Bingham, whose client is Drummond Cole. And then he sends another letter unprovoked, gets another $25,000 contribution. I mean, it don't take a genius to realize cause and effect right there. I mean, I'd be sending letters, churning them out as fast as the printer could print them if I was getting $25,000 every time I mailed a letter.
Well, that's pretty good, Jack.
It's a hell of a return on your dollar.
Yeah, and it was state money. Send the
Then he has to
out.
be printed in color. That's like 10 cents a page. You're good to go.
Right.
Well, I mean, Jack, you know, look, they've resisted GASP. We've sent a request for the same
Alabama
email.
Political Reporter.
Alabama
Yes.
Political Reporter has. But I don't hold out much hope unless we sue them. I really don't.
You mean you want to see the letters between Luther and whomever?
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
public.
Yeah.
They're public letters.
That's
Well,
right.
yeah.
They're in the
if
public
he
domain.
wrote them on behalf of the Attorney General's
He wrote
office.
them on Attorney General's letterhead, from what I
Absolutely.
understand.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably buried on
But, you know,
some
transparency in
computer in
government,
an extra
such a
bedroom.
novel idea in Alabama.
Well, as a good friend of ours always said, we wouldn't need so much damn transparency if people would just be honest, right?
That's true. Exactly.
I hate to get on this next one, but the daycare debate
Lord.
has raged on at the State House over the last week. And it seems like, Beth, that what's going to come out of this is that the big mega churches are going to be exempt from a daycare bill that says everyone must be inspected by the DHR, I guess it is, and everyone has to comply with a certain set of rules as laid out to protect children. But the big mega churches have lobbied, and it looks like they're going to win the day, and they'll be exempt.
Right, because God wants your children to be babysat by potential child molesters, right? Like that's what the Bible says or something. I mean, the whole thing here is that these big churches have daycare centers. They don't have to run background checks on their employees. They don't have to go through any kind of like safe serve food handling requirements that a public daycare does. And they're saying that this is because of separation of church and state. But I just don't buy that argument. I don't see how a church can operate a business that they don't pay taxes on and also don't have to undergo the same regulatory process. I mean, by that token, who starts a business? Why don't we all just start churches? And, well, this is my church that does carpentry because, well, Jesus was a carpenter, so it's sort of the same thing, right? I mean, it's just not acceptable.
Land here in a second.
It's just, no, I'm sorry, but like you can't operate a business under the guise of it being religious and then put your hands in the air. Kids are dying.
Operate a daycare center. It needs to be up for inspection, whether you're private or public or whatever.
Like kids are dying because of this legislation isn't in effect.
That's true, and that is a fact. That is a fact.
A child died when they did not pass it last year. Larry Stutz was the vote that killed that bill, and what, 2 months later, a 5-year-old died in the back of a van being driven by somebody who had a criminal record.
I know, and look, I kind of understand that they don't want government telling them how to do their stuff. On the other hand, I really don't like churches telling government how they ought to do their stuff. Right. So if you're going to have one, why can't you have the other? I mean, I'm all for God and country. I am not for the church running businesses that might harm folks or for anybody influencing politicians by inferring
well,
that they'll
health
send them to
departments
hell.
inspect country club kitchens, and they're private.
Right, and I don't want the legislature saying what order the sermon my pastor should give that Sunday, but certainly regulating something that involves children. Now, I think that's quite a bit different.
It's a business. If they weren't charging for children to attend, if this was a free service they were offering to the community, that I think we then have a different ballgame there. But they are charging parents to attend. This is no different than a public or another private business, except for that it's in a church.
I respect Dr. Godfrey and Eric Johnston's labor on behalf of the church. What I do think is that in this instance, they are wrong.
These are the same men that made sex toys illegal in Alabama, in case anybody's wondering.
Well, you know, hey, there's just about as far separation of church in that as I can imagine. Anyway, just not, you know, anyway. Judge Roy Moore has established a defense fund, Jack, because he is being sued by Lee Korfman. Any thoughts on that in the last 38 seconds?
Yeah, why doesn't he go away? I'm tired of Roy Moore. I'm sorry.
I want him to run as an independent for governor.
Yeah.
That'd be the best thing to happen to the Democrats.
That's because you want a Democrat to be governor.
No,
because that's what could very well happen. If he runs as an independent, old Kay's plan to keep him out of the governor's race might not be too smart.
You know, really, the truth is, Roy Moore, you know, he's done some crazy stuff, but I just like it when he's in the game. I do.
It makes for a very colorful game, that's for sure.
Well, he is a colorful
lot to write about.
We got some fun national news last time he ran. Maybe we get our time on CNN again if he runs.
You never know. They did love us.
I just hope he doesn't ride his horse to the courthouse.
No, well, no. All right, we're going to leave it right there. And the horse you rode in on. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. Access to clean, affordable energy continues to be an issue of vital importance in the halls of government and around the kitchen tables across our nation. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, you know, Democrats are emboldened, and some people say they shouldn't be, that this is false hope. But you and I both know that when people believe they can win, they actually start winning a little bit.
Well, here's the fear for Republicans. If you don't like Kay Ivey and you don't like Roy Moore, and Walt Maddox is the mayor of Tuscaloosa, credible candidate, Sue Bell Cobb. All right, once you get through the nominating process, if the Democrats put up a good slate, you may see a lot of straight ticket Democrat voting in Alabama, especially among African Americans who voted very strongly for Doug Jones. So there is a fear among Republicans that if the Democrats can find some very credible candidates, which they're capable of finding, it could be a horse race in some of these contests.
Well, Beth, they won't expand Medicaid. They're cutting this program and that program. They want people to pay for this and that and the other thing. And there's also this argument, and I've heard this, that you've had 8 years of Republicans, and you've had the governor had to resign under criminal charges, the Speaker of the House, criminal charges, Roy Moore, ethics charges. I mean, how much worse could a Democrat be?
Right, and the handful, I mean, don't forget the handfuls of other legislators and people who have
Yep.
rolled out. I mean, you know, and Democrats were no angels when we had control back before 2010. We had our fair share of scandals and our ethics issues. But, I mean, looking at this, what the average family needs is somebody who can say, let's put the partisan politics and the red meat for the base aside and do what's actually going to help put food on the table in this state. I mean, bringing new industry to the state doesn't help if we still have a minimum wage that pays poverty wages. And, you know, having world-class health facilities in Birmingham doesn't do any good if nobody can afford to walk in the door of the hospital. So that's what we have to do, is field candidates who will start talking about how these issues that the Republicans have swept under the rug are actually affecting our families.
Well, the last statewide official was Lucy Baxley, who everybody knew.
We love Lucy.
There was no reason not to vote for Lucy because we all love Lucy.
Yes,
But it'd be a challenge. You know, Walt Maddox is a very, as Jack brought up, a very impressive candidate. I mean, and he has successfully won in Tuscaloosa, which is really a Republican area of the state, time and again.
Yeah, but you don't run under a banner when you run for mayor.
Well, that's true.
But everybody knows he's a recognized Democrat. We all know that.
Yeah.
Well, he's conservative, he's reasonable, he's young, he's got good ideas, he's got a great looking family. That little son Eli is just as cute as a button.
You know, his wife's a Republican.
Well, she should be.
They're a mixed marriage. But I said, well, how are you going to convince Republicans to vote for me? He said, one at a time, and she goes. Stephanie looks like a very, very smart woman. Yeah. Beth, you know, there is a path. It's a narrow one, but there is a path.
There is, and I think, you know, if we see Roy Moore running as an independent, or, I mean, he could get the Republican nomination at this point. You know, if that happens, I think either Walt or Sue Bell has a chance to really throw a wrench in this whole Republican plan. You know, and I think they're both great candidates. I'm not getting in the middle of it because I want to see both of them win, frankly. But I think that either way, Roy Moore can be the wild card in this whole thing.
I don't think, and Judge Cobb, wonderful lady, served at the state. She's not got the backing that Walt Maddox does.
No, she doesn't.
I think she's got a backbone. Her problem is
Backing.
Oh, I hear she's getting a lot of money out of.
She's got some donors
out of the business community.
Really?
Remember too that she's run statewide times before, and Walt's never done that. So she does have the ability of having that kind of historical infrastructure in what the people that she knows help her in Crenshaw County, the people that she knows will help her in Marion County or whoever. You know, I mean, it's two different types of resource banks that she and Walt are pulling from, I think.
Well, I mean, what we hear from older Democrats is, no, I supported her when she ran for Chief Justice and won, and I'm not doing it this time.
Well, when she
resigned,
quit, that really became an issue to a lot of Democrats I've talked to.
And it's still an issue.
I mean, she walked away from the job.
That.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in their craw.
Anyway, she's a nice person. I don't think she can beat Kay Ivey. I think Walt Maddox could.
Well, we'll see what happens in January.
That's my opinion.
Well, if you were to get Walt and Roy and Kay all running in the general, that's going to be a rough and tumble race right there.
That would be. It'd be very entertaining.
Yeah. I tell you, you know, I haven't met this guy yet, but I read about him, and he had sent me a couple of emails introducing himself as Chris Christie. Not that one. You know, not the rotund guy from New Jersey.
Chris Christie.
Hey. Anyway, Susan, this guy is out of Birmingham. He's been a trial lawyer for a number of years, but he wants to be AG.
You know, the surprising thing is he actually seems like he knows what the job is.
Yeah.
Actually going in and protecting the citizens and my two favorite words, going after public corruption.
Yeah, he does say that, Jack, in his interview with Chip Brownlee. He says, you know, the main job of the Attorney General is to represent the state of Alabama in legal cases and to fight public corruption. That's what the office is really about, handling the legal issues of the state and prosecuting criminals of that certain political class. Steve Marshall doesn't seem to understand that. He thinks it's about human trafficking.
He's still standing up to
opioids.
He's going to have some stiff competition in the Republican primary. If Troy King gets in this race, that's going to be a big deal. Glenn Murdoch, former Supreme Court justice, if he can raise the money, he'll be credible.
Alice Martin.
Alice Martin.
Absolutely.
Record on Alice Martin.
She's a bulldog.
I happened to be at a restaurant Friday night and with some people, and she was there. She was in Montgomery for the weekend and sat down. And we broke bread together, and I had a long conversation with her. She was very impressive.
Yeah,
I love her record, and she also speaks my language of going after public corruption.
Well, that's the very reason they want a guy like Marshall and don't want someone like
But that's the voters' choice.
well, it is, but the voters got to be made aware of it. But anyway, back to Mr. Christie. He was former Bradley A. Rent, retired to run for office. He's a Rhodes Scholar, Duke University law grad. Beth, he might be too damn smart to be
I was gonna say,
Attorney
it sounds
General.
like he's too smart to do this. I don't. I mean, yeah, and I think a lot of him. He actually came to the State of the Union watch party with the Young Democrats on Monday, Tuesday,
I wouldn't say that
right?
to too
Yeah,
many
Tuesday.
people.
No, we watched the State of the Union. We had
and-
bingo cards and played the game, but it
And
was
Doug
fun.
Jones couldn't hop out of his seat fast enough to applaud Trump.
Well, he sees the handwriting on the wall.
But what I'm saying is that he's out in the community. He's showing up. He's meeting people. You know, I think he's doing what he needs to do. And
Truth
we'll
is,
back
Doug
our
Jones
slate.
doing a good job. He's not.
Oh, I was
made-
talking about Chris Christie.
Yeah,
but
okay.
yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
Doug's great. I
Doug's
love
not
Doug.
made any mistakes so far. He's done pretty good in a tough spot. But this Chris Christie's interesting. If the Democrats can get a lieutenant governor candidate that's strong, it's going to be very interesting, Jack.
It is.
We're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us, because we watch them.